for joining us. I'm Liza Ryan, and this is ThinkTech Hawaii and Community Matters. And today we have Kim Ryan joining us from his Kailua Kona base organization, Chosen and Dearly Loved. Thank you so much, Kim, for joining us.
It's a joy to be with you.
And he's the Vice President of Operations and Global Care for an organization that works with orphans with special needs. And so today he's going to come and talk to us a little bit about their global mandate and how they started here in Hawaii.
Well, I'm thrilled to get to share that. You know, I have a tremendous passion for children, and you happen to be one of my own children. So I've been blessed with 5 incredible children. And that love for children has really extended into my passion to rescue orphans. Right now in the world we live in, there's an estimated 153 to 163 million orphans. And that's such a huge number, but it's been redefined. The whole word orphan has been redefined recently by the major organizations because of the HIV crisis. When we think of orphans, we usually think of a child that doesn't have any parents. But in the world we live in today, there's about 12 to 18 million orphans like that. But the rest of them are orphans with only a single parent. And there's just an epidemic of children across the world we live in today who really have no one to provide for them, protect them, give them any kind of future and a hope. And that's why we are so devoted to reaching orphans with special needs around the world through this organization, Chosen and Dearly Loved.
So could you talk to us a little bit about what that means, this term special needs, and why is that important, how it relates to the adoptive world?
Sure. You know, orphans with special needs is a critical category because in reality, of the 153 to 163 million orphans in the world today, 95% of them literally are over the age of 5. And this is what's happened. According to all the global statistics, when a child reaches 5, they're virtually unadoptable or they're undesirable for adoption.
And why is that?
Because the people know that oftentimes they're going to be bringing a child who's significantly damaged or has disabilities or has trauma-related issues into their home, and they just don't feel capable of handling that kind of level of care. And so what happens is that it further intensifies the cycle of struggle that these children are in and the trauma that they live with. And it makes them so more and more less desirable, and as a result, they become special needs children. Technically, a special needs child is any child, or a special needs orphan is any child under the age of 7 with a physical, mental, or emotional disability. And that's who we first seek to get placed in American homes.
Now, you have been with, the organization's been up and running for about 5 years.
Yeah. And
the founders themselves are adoptive parents of a special needs child, right?
Yeah, incredible family. They were from Chicago, then they moved to Kailua Kona in Hawaii there, and love it there, but they have 3 natural children from their own marriage. But then they found this marvelous little girl who had been abandoned by Chinese parents in an American hospital. And she was born with spina bifida, and her parents didn't want her and left her at the hospital. So they took her in. Her name is Hannah. She is the most engaging, she just captures your heart in less than 5 seconds. But she can't walk. I mean, she has a club feet. Right now, she's getting ready for major surgery. She's going to have her leg amputated. And that was their first adopted child. Then they had a chance to go to Uganda, and they found this incredible pair, these twins, and Eli and Ellie, and these adorable children, but they were on the verge of death. Their mother died shortly after childbirth. The children were malnourished at birth, and they adopted them into their family. And now it's so fun to hang out with them. They have this family of 6 children, and they are one wild group of people. It's just a joy to be with them.
So then why did they decide to found Chosen and Dearly Loved? And can you explain a little what the title means and the name and heart of that mission?
Well, you know, even though they have these 3 orphans with special needs, they feel that they were handpicked or chosen for them. And they have a tremendous amount of joy in having these children in their life. So they feel like these children have been a gift to them. And they want everyone else to experience the joy of bringing these special children into their lives. And that's why they called it Chosen and Dearly Loved. They feel that they were chosen and that God was kind to them and dearly loved them and to allow them the privilege of having these children. And they want everyone else to have the privilege of having these orphans with special needs in their life.
Now, one of the issues that we were discussing before is also children with special needs often become orphans.
Yes.
And can, because of either cultural or you know, the challenges of caring for a child that has special needs. And so special needs can develop during the process of being an orphan or can be the reason for being orphaned.
That is so true. I've had the privilege of traveling all over the world, and part of my joy of my job is to find orphans that need a home, especially orphans with special needs, and placing them in a home in country or bringing them back to America. And oftentimes the root reason that these children become orphans is because of their disability. They're seen as cursed or lesser than, inferior, someone not to be desired. I spent 3 weeks in Nepal just recently before the earthquake there, and I lived in a home with a man who had 10 orphan children. Now, one of those children, amazingly, the only defect he had to his body was that he had 2 toes that were webbed together by skin. But because of that culture's, you know, this vision of any child with any defect is not desirable, it should be thrown away, that child was literally taken to the woods, thrown away. And unless this family that I stayed with if they hadn't intervened, that child would have died in the woods. All because of a belief system that perceives minor defects as reason to abandon and discard a child. That's why we are so critically invested in this concept of chosen and dearly loved. Their special need, their defect, their disability doesn't make them lesser than, it makes them special. They're orphans that are special. That's how we see them. And then,
so the countries that you are working then are predominantly, what you said, China, Uganda, India,
Cambodia.
Cambodia.
Yeah, Nepal. Yeah.
And are these areas that are especially affected by this process of being orphaned because of special needs or disabilities?
Yes, I mean, just before I left to come over to Honolulu from Kailua Kona, I got on my desk a request for grants for 2 Chinese children. One had spina bifida, and the other was an albino. And because of their disabilities or their lack of desirability, I would say.
Was this from Africa?
No, this was from China.
Oh, from China. Sorry.
Yeah, and they were put up immediately for adoption. And this is what we're finding. From Ethiopia and China and other places, if a child has anything out of the normal range of acceptable differences, any special medical issue, any defect physically, then they're just considered unwanted. And they're often taken to an orphanage and just abandoned. And so then we work with caregivers in nation to find them a home here in America.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what we wanted to discuss a little bit more in depth is then what does Chosen and Dearly Loved do?
Yeah. Well, we have 4 aspects of our organization. The first thing we love to do is adoption grants. When we find a family in America that wants to adopt a child, an orphan with special needs, we have them contact a great organization called LifeSong. LifeSong walks them through the entire process of what it means to adopt, how much it's going to cost, what it's going to be involved in your marriage, how it's going to impact your children. And they help the family really make an informed decision about what it's like to adopt a child. But when the family says, yes, given all this information, the real cost of it, we want to do this, and they qualify to be an adoptive family, then they will contact us. LifeSong will contact us and say, we have a great family, wants to adopt 2 children or 1 child from China with spina bifida or some cerebral palsy. Could you help us? We then go to the family and say, we're going to give you a $5,000 grant if you can raise $5,000 in adoption money from your community of friends. So we match grants up to $5,000 for every family that qualifies and applies to us.
Now that is part of the issue of adoption, is the high cost. And so does that vary depending on what nation children are coming from? Is it more expensive to adopt in certain countries, or?
Yeah, you know, the average international adoption, like from China or Ghana, where we often do adoptions from, or Ethiopia, is over $30,000.
Wow.
So what you'll find is these adoptive families are making a huge sacrifice to bring this child home. And many of them take out a second mortgage, they sell their car. I mean, they are really laying their life on the line. So what we want to do is we want to remove as much of that barrier as possible. By that $5,000 grant, we help minimize some of that cost. You know, many times a family has to go to Ghana or China, stay there for 10 days to get acclimated with the child, and then have to come back again.
Yeah.
So it's arduous and expensive.
So then, in addition to working and providing those grants, then part of the organization is also developing the capacity of local families, because obviously, as you were saying to me earlier, you know, for every one adoption in the U.S., there are 100 more orphans in country that need homes. And so what does Chosen and Dearly Love's work with local communities in these countries look like?
Well, it's so gratifying to know that we can help so many children with so little money. And what we do at Chosen and Dearly Loved is we find superb caregivers. We try to find pastors, community leaders, orphanages, organizations that have a high performance and a high level of care, who really never manipulate or victimize the children, but truly care for the children. You know, in India right now, only 1 out of every 5,000 orphans gets adopted. Literally, I was just there in the month of March. I spent the 3 weeks walking through the streets and slums of major cities in India, identifying orphans that had no hope, no visible means or apparent means of any care whatsoever. And we're finding these children and we're putting them in the homes of pastors, community leaders, caregivers, quality orphanages, and then we raise the money. It costs us about $25 a month to support a child in India, and we make sure that those caregivers have everything they need. Now, this is not just food and water and shelter. This is really a quality care plus an education. We believe that education is the critical factor that will break the cycle of poverty in these countries. And you know, in America, we get so blessed by the reality of social services and national services that we can appeal to help us get through difficult times. But these nations that I work in, like Haiti and India and Cambodia, are woefully lacking in adequate social services to really facilitate care for these orphans.
So then, how does that work in areas, what do you mean by providing education? Then is it helping to set up schools or making sure that they get enrolled in school? And is that boys and girls both?
Yes, we'll do whatever it has to be done in order to ensure the child has a future. In other words, many times I'll go in and I'll start a school, or I'll work with a pastor or a leader to facilitate the building of a school. Right now in Cambodia, we walked into a slum that has 2,500 to 3,000 people in it. No education, no social services, people in abject poverty. So we asked them, what do you need from us? Children everywhere. 7-year-old children are carrying around 2- and 3-year-old children, caring for them. We asked them, how could we serve you? We're not here to impose anything on you. We're here to be your servants. They said, we want education for our children. So we said, we will do that. So we cleared out a rubbled area that they gave us, put up a little fence around it, some tin over it, and then we went and secured teachers, and we started a school, and we have over 100 children in it. And then from them, we find out, well, who of these children are orphans? And then we come behind them and we support them.
And identifying who is an orphan in some of these places can be quite difficult, especially in places like Cambodia, where orphanages have become so prevalent. And often there can be a type of fraud that is present in places like India, not so much in China as far as I know, but definitely in Southeast Asia. What does Chosen and Dearly Loved do to look deeper? Are you employing local trusted contacts that can identify who is an orphan and where they come from, and if they have parents or their parents just don't want to take care of them?
Yeah, you know, this is a critical issue because both in India and Cambodia, The reason there's so few adoptions is because of the pattern of victimization. Often children are taken into homes and used for sexual gratification, they're used for slavery. So it's absolutely critical that as an organization, we find quality, high integrity caregivers. And the way we do that is I'm not only the Vice President of Operations for Chosen and Dearly Loved, I'm also the President of the Life Giving Network. And I oversee 100 churches throughout India and Cambodia. And I've handpicked the men and women there who have the highest integrity, who have a passion to reach children, and they become the critical connection in these communities all over India and Cambodia, where I can feel safe putting children into their care, whether they match them with a family in their congregation or in their own family. I give you an example. I have this amazing pastor. He has 3 children himself. He lives in a tiny hut, less than 200 square feet. But he was so committed to caring for 5 orphans in his congregation, he's literally building out of mud another 300 square feet. And he asked me, could you give me $1,000 to help me build a mud hut to take these 5 children? He's going to have his own 3 children and his wife who's pregnant with another child, plus 5 orphans living together in less than 500 square feet because he's committed to them having a future and a hope. These are the kind of people that are out there. If we can resource them and care for them and hold them accountable, they can give child after child, orphan after orphan, truly a future and a hope. It's amazing.
Thank you so much, Kim. And on that note, we're going to go to a commercial break. You're watching Community Matters with Liza Ryan, and we're discussing Chosen and Dearly Loved.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii. And I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
Welcome back. You're watching Community Matters with Liza Ryan on ThinkTech Hawaii, and today we're discussing the plight of orphans around the globe with Kim Ryan and his organization, Chosen and Dearly Loved. Thank you so much, Kim, for being with us.
It's so fun to be here.
And we were discussing before the break a little bit about what Chosen and Dearly Loved does. And so at the moment, how many orphans have you been able to place and are working with at this time?
Well, just this year alone, we've had the privilege of placing 9 orphans from foreign countries into American homes. But over our history, we've had over 30 orphans that we've placed in the last year into American homes. But now recently, we've just adopted 100 orphans that we have placed in country in homes and great care in both India and Cambodia. So we are rapidly expanding our placement capabilities. And it's just amazing the difference. You know, it takes up to $30,000 to $40,000 to place one child from China or India into an American home. But within country, I can do a child for $25 to $30 a month and provide a great care for them, plus an education. So we're finding that we need to do both. Some children absolutely need to be taken out of country and can be placed in an American home.
Is that due to medical issues or
Yes.
and the care that could be given? Okay.
Right. Yeah, some of them simply won't receive the care they need. Oftentimes we've helped to adopt children with heart disease or with respiratory illnesses that just create an absolute critical scenario for them to stay in country. Recently we helped 2 children be adopted from China that were both blind with a very degenerative eye disease. And they desperately needed to get out of country to get adequate care. And so we've really facilitated a lifeline for children who have no ability to live if we don't get them out of country.
And that is something that we were discussing a little bit quickly at the break, is that, you know, you mentioned we take for granted in the US and in other parts of the Western world, that we have these organizations that will come to the aid and to the rescue, not for everyone, and definitely in Hawaii we see people fall through the cracks in these areas, but in many of these countries, and as we're watching the situation in Nepal, there's absolutely no lifeline for the most vulnerable, and these children are truly the most vulnerable.
They are. And they have no voice, no one advocating for them. I'll give you an example. I was just in Cambodia, and when I went there, I got to spend half a day with 25 orphans with real traumatization. I mean, they had everything from Asperger's to Down syndrome to severe medical issues. Yeah. And many of them had literally spent the early part of their life chained up, put in a cage. Simply one parent would put a plate of food in front of them and leave them for 10 to 12 hours as they went out and did day labor. And the parents were making it pitiful. The one parent they had were making a pitiful amount of income. And they would come home and unchain the child or uncage the child for 2 or 3 hours in the evening, and then the child would spend again the next day. Now, we can't even conceive of that in America. This man I met is incredibly caring. He had polio himself. He walked with a severe limp. He said, this is just not right that human beings are treated this way. So he, in faith, started this daycare, and he's brought these children into his own care. His parents drop them off while they go to work. He treats them with great dignity. He not only provides therapy, he provides education, medical services, but then what's so amazing is he ends the cycle of debilitation by training the parent how to parent their own child with special needs. And he trains the grandparents and the social network how to care for this one child that's been a gift to them, but they don't see it as a gift. Yeah. And this is the thing that Chosen and Dearly Loved has the honor of doing. We come alongside these national champions who see the pitiful situation their children are in their countries. We're so used to having Plan B. We make a call to this government agency. If that doesn't work, we call another one. Yeah. They have no number to call. There is no Plan B. One of my pastors that I'm very close to, he was walking the streets of Ranchi, India. It's a city of about 2 million. And he looked down, he saw these 3 children. They were all brothers and sisters. It was touching, moves me every time. He saw them taking dirt from the ground and shoving it in their faces and eating the dirt, and found out that they had no one. These are all kids under 7. Yeah. No one caring for them. No one looking out for them. They were rags, they're dressed in rags. Their mouth was filthy. I mean, they were surviving on dirt. So he said, I'm a single man. What am I going to do? Yeah. And he said, I'm going to do something. Yeah. So he went and rented an apartment, found 2 superb caregivers, brought the children under his own care, paid personally for their provision and their protection, got them enrolled in a quality preschool and school, and now he has 7 of them, not just 3, because there's no Plan B. Yeah, yeah. No, and looking at this kind of example that you gave us about Cambodia, this seems like a pretty workable model. Is something you're trying to build on in other countries and other ways to really end the cycle of victimization and lack of, what is the other choice for these parents that have, not very much education on how to care for a child that has special needs. They need to provide for themselves and the child at the very, very basic level, food and shelter. There's so much that needs to be done in the education on that level. Is that something that Chosen and Dearly Loved is building and trying to multiply? Yeah, we feel that our second purpose is family support. So it's also part of educating the parents or the single parent. Many of the orphans we support have one remaining parent, and ultimately our desire is to keep them in the home with that single parent. So we're trying to create a network of support. Even right now, we've been working very extensively on an app that every adoptive family can download, and on that app they'll get inspiration, they'll get the name of therapists all over the nation, in America here that they can access who are experts in adoption issues and trauma issues for children. They'll get connectivity regionally to other adoptive families who have children with the same need that their children have.
Yeah.
And so both internationally and nationally, we're trying to make it easier and easier for adoptive families to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive in providing care for these children.
Now, in some countries, there is a real stigma around adoption.
Yes.
And so what is, in the different country, are you choosing to work in countries where you don't necessarily have to combat that stigma? Or is there, for example, in some Islamic countries, adoption is not condoned?
Right.
And so walk me through a little bit of what that process looks like both for American and Western parents who are looking to adopt, and I guess, from deciding that this is something that they want to pursue, and maybe meeting with Lifesong to become, to go over all of the options and the consequences and the costs of what would happen, and then where do they go from there? How does that process lay out for them, and then how do they bring a child with special needs into their own home, and does it vary obviously each child is different, and so I would assume that it's not just medical care that is often that needs to be addressed, but also psychological and emotional health. And so you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so often with the child, there comes not only the immediate medical issues, but then there's the deep issues of abandonment.
Yeah.
And the failure to bond. Again, we're asking children who've had no one to bond to, who've been abandoned. I've held in my arm child after child who simply was dropped at an orphanage or left on a street or was sold to slavery and was recaptured and brought home to an orphanage. And these children have no sense of security whatsoever. They have no understanding of how to feel at rest. That they're not going to be, the next moment when they get in the car, they're not going to be taken somewhere where they're going to be dropped off and abandoned again. So these issues become very challenging for an adoptive family to overcome. And we try to set them up to understand that that's part of the healing curve that's going to go on in the first 3 to 5 years, is getting these children through this abandonment phase and support them in that. Because it's overwhelming. And the child, like I listened to Dr. Karen Purvis when I was at a national symposium for orphan care just last week in Nashville, Tennessee. And she talked about how for the first few months when an adoptive child comes into a home internationally after traumatization, that they don't act out because they're not sure that they're going to be thrown out.
Yeah.
But when they know they're not going to be thrown out, then they start to act out. And the parent is caught off guard at going, what is happening here? This child seems like I brought a demon into my home. It's acting out all the unresolved anger and hurt and woundedness from all those years of abandonment and rejection. It's staggering.
So then how do you prepare local families if if the ideal then is to keep children within their own cultural and family context, possibly being able to reunite them with family members depending on the scenario. How then, obviously, because there are very few resources, what does that look like for them in country? They're possibly not going to have access to these types of therapists, to, the resources and information are similar to this app that you're working on for the U.S. Is there an international plan to work on resources at that level?
Yeah, that's our goal. That's why we feel like we're pioneering in American families what we want to take internationally. And we believe that we can do that. It's difficult though. Like example, in the orphanages that I work with in India, I have 5 different languages already among the 65 orphans I have in India. So not only do I have to generate materials and give them a resource, but then I have to find a way to translate it into 5 different languages so that the parents have the language, their mother tongue, so that they can really absorb the information.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
And you only have 7 staff.
Yes, I do. But we're growing fast.
So that means that you're pretty busy.
We are busy.
You're very, very busy. And this is not, how long have you been working with Chosen and Dearly Loved? About 6 months?
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
you've made it around to a lot of different places in the last 6 months.
Yes, I have.
But your, I would say, interest is passion and desire to work with these most vulnerable populations didn't begin 6 months ago, obviously.
No.
You've been working in Haiti for
Many, many years.
many, many years. And if you could talk just a little bit about why you started working with orphans in the first place.
I think for me, I truly believe that every child is priceless.
Yeah.
And when I look at a child, I just feel they deserve to be treasured, not thrown away. And I just feel I owe it to them. Every child deserves a chance at life. I wanted all of my children to have that. But every child I see, I believe that they're irreplaceable, priceless. They are the best thing on the face of the earth. And I want to give them a future and a hope. You know, in our culture that is so bent toward the accumulation of stuff and measuring worth and value, your net worth by how much you have, to me, we've forgotten that humanity is the only thing that has the capacity to be eternal.
Yeah.
And every child is priceless in his capacity to bring so much good and transformation to our nations. That's why it's so grievous to see, you know, Down syndrome children overseas are the most likely candidates for sexual victimization. And I go, how can we do that to another defenseless child? And so I feel within me, and part of my own manhood is to rise up and be a protector. I want to be more than a provider. I want to be a protector. I don't want the innocent to be victimized by depraved humanity. And so it's at the very essence of who I am. My convictions really come out of my faith and my relationship with God. And he makes a statement in one of his proverbs. He says, "He who turns his ear away from the cry of the poor will cry himself and not be heard." So I'm not going to turn my ear away. I'm not going to harden my heart. I'm not going to submit to compassion fatigue or let my life be desensitized by the constant bombardment of information. I was just in Nepal. I was just from one end of the nation of Nepal to the other. I've been at the very center of where the earthquake took place, and then the aftershock. I know what it's like there. I've been in contact daily with them. It's not just statistics. It's people.
And on that note, we're going to go to break at the moment. This is Liza Ryan with Community Matters on ThinkTech Hawaii.
Aloha, I'm Kili'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Thank you for watching. This is Liza Ryan with Community Matters, and today we're talking to Kim about his role with the organization Chosen and Dearly Loved, working with orphans with special needs across the world. Thank you so much for being here with us,
Thank you.
Kim. And you were just telling some very poignant stories about children that have special needs and the victimization. Is there, are there plans for Chosen and Dearly Loved to become more advocates and to advocate for these children at a national level?
Yeah, we feel like one of the intrinsic missions we have is to create awareness of how at risk these children are. I just wrote a 90-second cutting-edge video that's going to be launched as a national campaign called Come Home. And we just underscore through a motion graphics and a video piece how at risk so many children are. 80% of the 153 to 163 million orphans in the world are orphans with special needs. That means that they're at risk from being used for sexual victimization to murdered or thrown away or abandoned. So we're creating a whole series of videos right now to simply raise awareness that are going to be launched on YouTube and to really help people understand that. Because we feel like the first step is for people to be aware of how at risk these orphans really, really are.
Yeah, and I feel that there was something, you know, a couple of years ago, I feel like the kind of international and public became aware of the issue of slavery and
Yes.
specifically trafficking and human trafficking and how prevalent it was. And that was really led by grassroots organizations that decided that they were going to make that information available, and through documentaries, through campaigns.
Yeah.
And do you feel that this is an issue that needs to be addressed in a similar capacity?
Yeah, that's the way we feel it will be most effective. You know, there's a lot of great literature or books out there, and there's statistics, but we know that people are most motivated and most captivated by something that's graphic or pictorial, that's really well done in a short amount of time. So we are targeting creating all kinds of pieces that are under 3 minutes to hit a national campaign called Come Home.
Okay.
And we do that because, you know, we believe that these children don't have a voice. They have no one advocating for them. And so we want to be a voice for the voiceless and make sure their voice is being heard.
And so could you tell us a little bit about some of those voices, some of the orphans that have gone through this organization? I know that Mandy and Mike, the founders of Chosen and Dearly Loved, have 3 orphans that have obviously gone through this process. But what have you seen on the other side? What are some success stories? Or
Well, you know, it's so gratifying. I've seen, like, right now I work with some adults who have been raised as and adopted as orphans in country in India. And it is so amazing. This one woman went to India, saw the orphan epidemic there, and decided, I'm going to adopt 50 children. So she took in 50 orphans from all over India. She limited herself to 50. She is an amazing woman. Now these children have been nurtured by her, cared for, and now they're my pastors, and I lead them, many of them. They are the most well-rounded, delightful, compassionate, fun-loving, healthy individuals I've met in India. And I just see the power of adoption. And so we're using that as a reference point.
okay.
What we're going to do with Chosen and Dearly Loved is match these children, both in America, India, Cambodia, all over the world, in homes where they can thrive, where they can develop, where the essence of their personhood is flourishes.
Yeah.
And that's how we're doing it. We're doing it through finding quality caregivers, then raising the income in America or Canada to support them overseas.
Now, and how is that going? I mean, obviously, all of this takes funds and to make it happen.
Yeah.
And what is the organization's outreach look in fundraising?
Well, you know, we've been very fortunate to have a strong base in the Denver, Colorado area. Mike was a businessman there. His father's been a dynamic CEO of major corporations there. And we had our first fundraiser highlighting the orphans with special needs. And fortunately, we were able to raise $360,000 in one night. And that's been a tremendous blessing for us to share that now with orphans all over the world and with adoptive families in America. So, but you know, we need to continue to do that. So one of the things we're doing is simply inviting people to take $25 a month and adopt an orphan in country, like Cambodia or India, and work with us to make a future for a priceless child. And that's what we're doing. And we're seeing people now really respond to it. But then we've got some other ideas. You know, we've decided that we have the capacity in America to generate wealth. And I have a business background, and so does Mike. So we are pulling together investment teams who will come up with creative enterprises and businesses to generate wealth, so that in every way we can, we're going to get as many children a home and a future as possible.
That's really wonderful. And We talked a little bit earlier about this Orphan Summit. What is the international community look like? Is this a predominantly American-led kind of campaign, or are you seeing other countries coming in and becoming aware of these issues? Obviously, you know, with Syria and now Nepal, you know, they become flashpoints. You know, the rest of the international media looks at them and you know, is concerned with them for a couple of weeks, but they're not necessarily thinking about all the orphans that are the outcome. And orphans not just because their parents were killed at that point in time, but also the disintegration that happens when families go through war and trauma and that way, and that there is a fallout that happens after that. Are there other international organizations that you're partnering with that are aiding you in working in these areas, or
Yeah, there has been a tremendous movement in the orphan care in the last 10 years. It seems like it's just, there has been all across the board. I sat with people at the conference from Brazil who are leading a major movement, adoption movement all through South America. There was people there, leaders of organizations from all over Africa and all over China. I mean, there is a tremendous passion emerging all over the world to rescue these orphans. So I'm very excited that the future for these children is going to get brighter and brighter. But still, you know, 153 to 163 million orphans is a staggering number. And unless there's a united effort to really focus on it and to attack the issues of poverty and injustice, that and also cultural beliefs that give permission to violate children, this is going to be a continuing problem.
Yeah. And again, those are all different in each of those countries, but what are some aspects that even locally, now you live in Hawaii now, and this is, you call this home despite your rigorous travel schedule. You know, what is it that people here can do about this, aside from just giving, how can they be a part of that change?
Well, one avenue that so many families right here in Hawaii could be a part of is foster care. Like on the Big Island, we just held a clinic on Saturday at Chosen and Dearly Loved for a future adoptive, future foster care families, because there's a tremendous need for more and more foster care families across all of Hawaii, but especially on the Big Island. And so one practical thing that a family could consider doing is being a respite care family for foster children, or providing a long-term caregiving. They can also contribute to, they hear of an adoptive family, they can contribute to that finances of adopting a child. They can participate with Chosen and Dearly Loved in its desire to care for children both nationally and internationally. There's just so many things we could do. And we would be happy to talk with anybody interested in any of those avenues.
So again, those are, and some of those options are, can you find them on the website for Chosen and Dearly Loved? And, okay. Well, as we wrap up here, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and making time to come and speak with us at, on ThinkTech Hawaii. And that we hope that, you know, as a community here, we can be more involved with caring for those that are vulnerable and that need our attention and our help, and that we don't just look at adoption as something, it almost seems like an antiquated, it seems like an antiquated term and an action to take, but that still there are increasingly more and more children that need good homes, that need safe and loving caregivers, and people to tell them that they are valuable and priceless. And so thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Well, I love doing it. They're worth saving.
Yeah.
Every child deserves a chance.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been Liza Ryan on Community Matters with ThinkTech Hawaii and with Kim Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.